Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really opening a door.
And not just into a piece of literature.
Oh, much more. We're looking at the final, chaotic, and frankly revolutionary manuscript left behind by the legendary author V.V.
Right. And you have to remember, this is a man who built his entire career on absolute precision, the perfect sentence, the perfect structure.
He was an architect. But this last work, The Prismatic Death, it's something else entirely. It's part novel, part desperate journal.
And part map, a functional map of consciousness drawn in his last days.
That's our mission today, to unpack how all this came together. We're tracking three seemingly separate things: V.V.'s fiction, the research of a mysterious acquaintance, Madame, and a real physical garden door in France.
And it all points to one concept.
The aperture.
And that's the hook, really. V.V. always believed genius was about control, about making the perfect forgery of life.
But this last book, it flips that completely. It suggests that real genius isn't about creating something new.
No, it's about finding the structure that's already there, the one that underlies everything. And for him, that structure only became visible as the boundaries of his own self started to dissolve.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Let's start right there. In V.V.'s hospital bed, he's 78 years old.
He knows he's facing what he calls the final betrayal of his body.
But his mind is still razor sharp, still delighting in words. And he fixates on one in particular, aperture.
He looks it up, of course. The Latin root, aperire, meaning to open.
He treats it less like a word and more like a clue he needs to solve.
And this focus on opening starts to pop up everywhere. He's lying there looking at the ceiling.
Like those awful institutional ceiling tiles.
Exactly. And he starts counting the holes. The perforations.
You're kidding.
Not at all. He counts them. 11 across, 14 down, 154 apertures per tile. For him, this wasn't just being bored. This is grounding his thinking. The tile isn't solid. It's a grid of potential openings.
Wow. And right as this is happening, the novel he's writing starts taking on this same shape.
The novel within a novel, yeah.
It's about an aging entomologist named Dorian. Now, V.V. loved butterflies, but Dorian collects beetles.
Which is such a key detail. Beetles are creatures of the earth, of enclosure. The total opposite of V.V.'s airy, bright butterflies.
And Dorian's big discovery in the book is this massive recursive idea.
That consciousness is everything. He calls it the stage, the script, the performers, and the audience. A structure of infinite recursion.
Like looking into two mirrors.
Precisely. Though V.V. himself worried the whole thing was a diminished thing. The work of a mind already failing.
But the real spark, the thing that pushed him over the edge, wasn't his diagnosis. It came from outside.
It was a letter from Montreux, arrived just 3 weeks before he got the final news.
This is where Manon comes in.
Yes. And she wasn't some mystic. She was a serious researcher, a scholar. She was compiling hard evidence of consciousness surviving death.
And she was also dying.
She was. And her research led her to this radical conclusion.
That the brain doesn't create the mind.
It's a receiver, a transmitter. The mind is this universal field, and the brain is just the device, the aperture that focuses it into the narrow stream we call me.
And her letter with this exact idea arrives.
At the very moment, V.V. is lying in bed, counting the apertures in his ceiling.
That is just unbelievable.
For V.V., it was undeniable. It wasn't a coincidence. He called it the signature of pattern.
Meaning the story he was trying to invent was already writing itself. The pattern was in charge, not the novelist.
It completely changed his relationship to his own art. He just stopped trying to force an ending. He realized he was now just transcribing a reality he was getting closer and closer to.
And then came the final piece of the puzzle.
3 weeks later, after Madame had passed away, a telegram arrived for V.V.'s wife, Vera.
What did it say?
It was a Madame's final message. Just 7 words. Tell him the door opens both ways.
The door opens both ways. That feels like the key. The permission slip for him to just let the novel go where it needed to go.
And it goes somewhere incredible. In the book, it leads Dorian, the entomologist, to the climax.
Right. He's following this bizarre garden plan left by his aunt, Marguerite.
And we learned this wasn't just a garden. She designed it as a physical map of consciousness. A labyrinth.
And at the very center of this map, Dorian finds it. A plain white door with a silver handle.
A physical aperture.
And when he opens it, the world just shifts. It doesn't open onto another part of the garden.
No. It opens onto a corridor, a long corridor lined with windows.
And what's outside the window?
His whole life. All of it. At once. All of it. Simultaneously is how V wrote it.
So it's not memory. He's not looking back.
No. It's a temporal sea. Every moment, birth, joy, pain, it's all just there, coexisting in the present.
Wait, that completely shatters linear time. How did Medamen's research or VV even frame that idea? It sounds like something out of quantum physics.
Well, that's exactly where Medamen's notes went. She said to think of it less like a river, where you flow from one point to the next.
And more like a library.
A massive library, yes. And in our normal lives, we can only read one page at a time. But in that corridor, Dorian sees the whole library at once. Every page, every volume, all accessible.
And she actually linked this to theories of space-time.
She did. To the idea of the block universe, where past, present, and future all exist together, and our now is just a slice we're currently focused on. For VV, this wasn't just theory. He realized the corridor was identical to one he'd seen in a childhood dream.
So it confirmed for him that he wasn't inventing this.
Not anymore. He wrote that he felt like a stenographer, taking dictation from some source I cannot identify.
He had completely surrendered authorship.
And that surrender gets tested right away. Dorian reaches a final circular room, and in the middle there's a box.
Okay, so what's in the box?
That's the thing. VD, the master of words and invention. He couldn't invent its contents. He hit a wall.
An artistic crisis, then? For a man obsessed with control, that must have felt like a total failure.
You would think so. But he realized that inventing something would have been a lie. It would diminish the truth. So instead, he just observed.
Observed what? The box in the book.
No. His own consciousness, right there in the hospital bed.
Yeah.
And in that moment of total surrender, he had the breakthrough. The box wasn't empty. It wasn't holding an object. It was breathing.
Breathing?
Yes. Because it contained consciousness itself.
Yeah.
Not Dorian's consciousness or VV's, but the universal ground, the source from which all awareness emerges.
So the box breathes because awareness itself is alive.
Exactly. The writer's job wasn't to say what was inside, but just to recognize that the container itself had a life force.
And that must change everything for Dorian. His whole life was spent collecting beetles, penning them to a board.
Trying to stop time.
Yes, trying to freeze beauty in a static form.
And as he passes that final threshold, he sees it. He sees that his life's work was a fundamental error. This whole impulse to collect and pin things down was based on the delusion that life could be captured and held still.
So the final passage of the book is a release.
A total inversion of his life. He finds what VV calls light and love, but not as sentiment, as the fundamental structure of reality.
The pin is removed.
The pin is removed. The boundary between the wave and the ocean dissolves. It's the ultimate metamorphosis, the caterpillar becoming the butterfly.
And Vivi's last written words on the very last index card.
Dorian said about his work, the old work of pinning things down was over. The new work of simply being had begun.
He passed away shortly after that. His last spoken word was just there.
And this is where the story of the manuscript really deepens because of his wife, Vera.
Right, because Vivi's instructions were famous. Burn all unfinished work.
But Vera defied him. She knew what she was holding in that stack of index cards. She spent 3 months typing it all out, deciphering his final, almost illegible scrawl.
So the most essential part of his life's work only survived because she disobeyed him.
An amazing irony. And because she saved it, scholars years later found this incredible corroboration for everything he'd seen.
Starting with Madame N's archive, that provided the scientific framework.
Her notes were so important because they weren't based on belief, but on observed phenomena, especially a concept called terminal lucidity.
Let's be clear on that for the audience. Terminal lucidity is when patients with severe dementia or brain disease, they suddenly regain full clarity right before death.
Precisely. And Mab N argued this is the strongest possible evidence that the brain is a receiver.
Because if the brain created consciousness, its failure should mean the signal just fades to nothing.
Right. But here, the failure of the brain seems to widen the aperture. The filter breaks down, and the full bandwidth of consciousness comes flooding back in. The light doesn't go out, the lens just stops restricting it.
The mechanism fails open. That is so counterintuitive, but it fits perfectly.
It does. And she drew those links to quantum mechanics, where the observer and the observed aren't separate things. V found the structure through fiction. She found the footnotes in the science.
But the part that gives me chills, the thing that makes this whole story unforgettable, is the connection to the real world.
The garden.
A graduate student, Clara Rossi, was researching literary geography.
And she proved it. Dorian and Marguerite was a real person.
Huh?
And the garden, the physical map of consciousness, it wasn't fiction.
It exists. The property near Grasse, in France, And the
The
door.
white door with the silver handle. It's
Yeah,
there.
really there. And it was just restored in 2023. You can go see it. This turns the novel from a metaphor into an actual map, a pilgrimage.
And that's reflected in how people reacted to the book. When it was finally published, it didn't really get reviews. It got testimonies,
Testimony.
letters, from hospice nurses, from physicists, from just regular readers, all saying it had been a transformative healing experience. They felt the book itself was a door that had opened for them.
JV basically built a working mechanism. His own final notes seem to confirm that. He wrote aperture, soul's pupil.
And then the single final word in the margin. So in the end, the distinction just dissolves, between the author, the character Dorian, and you, the reader. It all collapses. Art, in this final sense, isn't about telling a story. It's about building doors. The words are the apertures. And if you approach them right, the light passes through.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you, the learner who wants to be informed? It seems to mean that the deepest literary insight written under the greatest possible pressure can align perfectly with the most challenging scientific theories we have about reality.
It means that the dying mind isn't just failing. It might be gaining access to a perspective that's hidden from us in our busy everyday lives.
We learn that the door opens both ways.
Right, so if consciousness really is the ground of all reality, and the awareness looking out through your eyes is also the thing being perceived, then the final question is really one of recognition.
When you approach your own threshold,
Will you find that the consciousness looking back at you is the one that has been waiting for you all along? Go. The door is there. It opens.